Welcome everyone to Farewell to Make It and hello Maker Learning Idaho. This is where we are going to have a send-off for the Make It at the Library program, which has been a beloved program here at the Idaho Commission for Libraries. And I'm joined today by Trisha Mick from the Idaho EcoSystem, who will be helping us hand off to what Make It will be going forward, because we wanted to make sure that even though we're sunsetting what the Make It program has been, that we're not just leaving you hanging, because there's some amazing work that has happened over the years with Make It, and there's many years of cool stuff to happen going forward. And so we're kind of broadening the tent. So thank you, Trisha, for joining us today. And being a part of the history of the Make It at the Library program. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take us on a little trip down memory lane. And I'm going to do that by first off sharing some numbers. So the Make It at the Library program started in 2013 with a pilot. So technically that's 11 years, but we'll call it 10 from the official first one. And since then, at least 172 libraries across the state have participated. So you can see a map there of all of the libraries that have participated over the years. And as of 2020, which was kind of the last year that we did the more formal Make It at the Library programs, at least 80,000 attendees were reported at maker events from those 172 libraries. So y'all have been doing amazing work bringing making to your communities. And I'm excited for this new phase of what that's going to look like going forward. And in 2021, in that year alone, all of the programs that the participating libraries did connected with almost 32,000 students, educators, or community members. And 98% of the library staff that participated in that year said that by participating library staff, they all strongly agreed that their participation will improve library services. So not only have you all been working towards bringing STEM and maker learning, but you've also been improving overall library services to folks in your community. So nice work, everyone. So what did that look like over the years? Well, let's take a stroll down memory lane at some of those pictures, shall we? So the first years, so 2013 was the pilot program, and 2014 was the first official year. So feel free, if you have participated in any of these years, or if you recognize any of these folks, feel free to get those in the chat. FYI, I can't see the chat, but feel free to talk amongst yourselves. So you can see here, there's Erica down in the bottom left corner, who of course was one of the main drivers in starting the Make It at the Library program. And then in the upper left is Sue, who has since retired from the commission, but Sue was also a huge supporter. So you can see that there was some Lego making. So there was a combination of kind of low tech and high tech that was happening. And also because it was the first few years, really wanting to provide that foundational understanding of why you would want to provide maker programming in your library. So getting at that kind of brain science component of it. The next year was 2015, and shifting from the brain science part more to kind of how to create a maker culture in your library and getting much more into the tech. So you can see in the bottom right there is the line of all of the cool stuff that everyone was going to get and their maker banners. I love that I found this picture of Clay, who down in the bottom center, who of course now is a staff member at ICfL. And so you can see that there was kind of this theme of always having low tech and very high tech, as you'll see on the left, folks working with creating, I think, some breadboards there that they're working on, because making can really be across the spectrum of things. And that was something that this program really embraced, was the idea of making didn't have to be just robots. However, robots are fun. And so in 2016, We brought on Edison robots. How many of you remember Edison robots? Those are still kicking around at some libraries. I know that some of this might also be a walk down like tech memory lane as far as laughing at some of the technology that we were using at the time. In the upper left, speaking of which, is I don't remember the brand of that 3D printer, but I know they have since gone out of business. I remember using one of those 3D printers. It wasn't my favorite 3D printing experience, but they were really handy and mobile and a great place for folks to get started. So some circuitry activities that were incorporated this year as well, and kind of that like low barrier of entry to circuitry, and then also some more advanced stuff as well. In 2016, can't keep a good robot down, so we kept on going with the Edison robots. And then the low tech thing that we had this year was the make dos, which I love seeing that those are still a thing that still get used in a lot of programming. So that one definitely has some good staying power to it. Doing some coding and circuitry as well. And you'll see there kind of in the center is Tina Schilling, who is a support staff member here at the commission. And she was a key role in Make It over the years, doing so much behind the scenes work with making sure that hotels got booked and people got fed and that they got their stuff and it got ordered and put in boxes and shipped out to them, and people got reimbursed for travel, and none of that would have been possible without the help of Tina over the years. And of course, who can forget Makey Makeys? Those are still a really popular introduction to making as well. All sorts of fun things that you can connect those to. I will never forget the first time that I did a gummy worm piano, and like kids were just chomping at the bit, literally, to wanting to eat those gummy worms. I had to fight them off. I'm like, do you know how many people have touched those gummy worms today? And they're like, I don't care. I want to eat one. Next up, we moved into, again, kind of a new methodology and way of thinking about making, and that was incorporating the design thinking cycle. So there was training on that and Cricut and circuitry for these years. The Cricut machine or other cutting machines have become really popular in libraries. They're a great tool to offer to communities. And so you can see some of the fun stuff that people were making there, and using iPads to do that design work was something that was new for a lot of folks too. So again, a mixture of high tech and kind of low tech that was going on for those years with the Cricut. And the Cricuts were so popular that we kept them for the next year. And this is where we kind of shifted from, in some of these previous years, there were sometimes 2 trainings that would happen every year. And this is kind of a year where we shift a little bit in what the maker trainings look like. So here we've got, in the upper left, we've got Sue and Dylan working with an iPad to create some video content. In the bottom center is a video that Tammy, Sue, Dylan, and I created, which I will be reposting later today on the Make It at the Library Facebook page as a kind of a little treat of a memory of what this program was. It is ridiculously low res, I will warn you, but still fun to have a look at. So coming up with really creative ways of using those Cricut machines to personalize stuff. I know since then, a lot of libraries have used them to personalize like water bottles that they give away as awards at ceremonies, or the sports team has all come into the library at high schools and use them to personalize their water bottles so they don't get mixed up with everybody else's. We also did video creation at the 2018 Make It convening, and that was a great opportunity to get tech into folks' hands again. So in 2018, we did that with all libraries, and then in I think it was late 2018, maybe 2019, Dylan and I, and I'm not going to remember who else, but we took it to Summer Summit, which is the summer training that happens for school library staff. And so they all also got iPads and had a lot of fun creating videos and thinking about different ways that they might use that technology at their library. And our timing was pretty great on that, which I'll get to in a second. But 2019 is where we shifted to the Maker Extravaganza. And so this is where I took us on the road. We went to 3 locations, and each location was different because I invited folks from the local community to give a presentation about a program that they had done. So there was some content that was the same at all of them, where we talked about personas and using Canva, but the hands-on programs were different at each of them. And then all of those slides, and actually all of the documentation of all these programs over the years still lives on the Make It website and will stay there. So if any of these pictures are piquing your interest, feel free to have a look at that content. And then 2020 came. I'm sure we all remember what happened in 2020. That was the year that we did not meet in person because it was a pandemic. And so Jeannie and I had so much fun and success the previous year with the video creation at Summer Summit that we decided to do a mashup of Summer Summit and Make It. And so she and I worked with a team at the commission, and we pulled in some subject matter experts from out in library land in Idaho to help us create these online modules. So every library that participated got sent a kit of the stuff in the bottom right-hand corner and the workbook in the upper left. And then Jeannie and I worked with folks to create some online content, which we put into Niche Academy, and everyone was able to kind of work through stuff that way. And we had some periodic checking in. So it was great that we had just given a whole bunch of schools iPads because we knew that they had the technology to access those videos from home. And then the next year, we were still a little skittish about meeting in person. And so in 2021, Make It was again all online. But this time it wasn't just for school library folks, and we opened it up to anyone. And we had these different modules that we created, again, in conjunction with experts at libraries all across the state. So you'll see in the middle there is a screenshot from when I was working on a video with some folks. So I was sitting at home working on that. And the upper left is the kit that everyone got. So it had some of those expandable silicone VR glasses that you put your cell phone in to look at stuff. And then there were online modules, again, in Niche Academy to help support the content that was in the box. And everyone got a shopping budget. So every library, rather than us compiling a really huge kit of cool stuff, the idea was that libraries could figure out which of those modules they'd gone through was going to be good stuff for them to do at their library, and then go and use the funds to go and purchase those materials. So after 2021, our model kind of shifted. Also, what was going on during this time is that when Make It at the Library started, there wasn't really another entity in the state that was doing that work. And over the years, so I think it was 2015, someone can put in the chat, 2015 is perhaps when STEM Action Center came onto the scene. Okay. And they were wholly focused on supporting STEM in formal and informal education settings across the state. So not only were they one of our funders for a number of these years, but also they were building up their capacities to support that work. So during this time, I was also behind the scenes trying to figure out how to transition from the commission really supporting this work to how to hand it off and have the STEM Action Center really kind of take the lead. So that's 2021, y'all. So this is something that has been in the works for many years. There's been a lot of different iterations, but I'm so excited that we've landed on the one that we're going to share with you here in a little bit. So as part of that winding down process of what Make It looked like over the years, 2022 was the first year that we didn't do a really formal in-person training. Instead, what we did is I did a maker meetup at the annual ILA conference, where I invited folks that have been doing cool programs across the state to come and share those with attendees at the library conference. And so we've got three of those shown here of some cool stuff that they were doing. And then we also had some activity time at that session, and there was a whole table of free stuff that I was giving away. So refer back to those Edison robots that I mentioned before. Some folks were still using those, and I had some extra bits and pieces hanging around. This was also the year that I worked with Gina Marker at Centennial High School here in West Ada School District. And coming out of the pandemic, and because of, you know, how students graduate from high school, and with them, knowledge goes with them. And so she was really struggling with re-engaging with the technology in her library. She'd been a huge, and still is a huge, supporter of maker programming for her students. And so she and I worked for a semester and came up with the Withering Technology Toolkit, which was a methodology that we created to help support that re-engagement with technology. And then we shared that at the Maker Ed conference, which was an online, I think technically an international conference that Make Magazine put together. So shifting to a little less stuff and more sharing of ideas is kind of what we were doing at this point. And then last year, oh my gosh, this was a doozy at the ILA conference. We had a double header. We had 2 sessions back to back. We had the Darn It session, and then we had the Maker Meetup. And this was so much fun. Let me know in the chat, any of y'all that were there. I know that the community library did an amazing job putting together these fabulous gift bags that had so many cool fabric pieces and notions and programming ideas. Everyone that was in attendance got one. And then also I had provided, each attendee was able to take away a few like pocket-sized sewing kits that were branded with ICfL and IMLS logos. The idea being that they could use those at kind of some fiber arts programming at their library. So that's what some of those bottom pictures are. So in the middle there, I was showing a sock that she'd been working on to kind of darn the heel on it. Don't know if you can see that. And in the upper picture is myself and Annie Gaines and a colleague from Boise State University. We gave a presentation on zines at the Boise Comic Arts Festival, who every year does a day for librarians and educators. So we did a whole session where it was hands-on. People were getting to make zines and think about what that might look like back at their library. So much fun over the years with Make It, and lots of different iterations. And all of it was done with the help of obviously ICfL staff, but also IMLS funding every year. And then the last few years, the Idaho STEM Action Center was a huge supporter of that work, and we couldn't have done it without them. So excited that there are entities both locally and nationally that see the value in this work, and that all of you also see the value in this work and continuing it. With that, I will sunset Make It at the library and not cry and hand it over to you, Trisha.
I love that. I was kind of waiting for that, like, Make It to actually like sunset behind the mountain. So, you know, maybe we'll make that happen.
There you go.
Yep. Well, hello. I think I know most of the names on here, and hopefully you know me, but I am Trisha Mick. I am the program coordinator with the Idaho STEM ecosystem. And previous to this role, I have been working in and around public libraries for about 15 years in Southwest Idaho, so Meridian and Boise. And then I spent about 18 months at Idaho Public Television, getting to travel across the state and actually doing programs in 52 libraries in 9 months, which was absolutely amazing. And I got to meet so many of you guys there. And Deana mentioned this a bit. STEM Action Center came on the scene in 2015, and our ecosystem director Erica Compton actually helped found and start up the STEM Action Center. And so when she moved from ICfL to the STEM Action Center, they really wanted to keep the STEM learning, the Make It learning happening across the state in both formal and informal areas. And in 2019, the STEM Action Center formed the Idaho STEM ecosystem. It's kind of confusing that we all have similar names, but we are an ecosystem that is part of 110 other ecosystems across the whole world. Most of those are in the US, but we do have a few ecosystems popping up in Africa, Europe, Canada, and Mexico as well. And so one of the things that we do as an ecosystem is we bring community together. We help connect partners together to help really support this idea that STEM is more than just a single person, that is more than just a single profession or a single idea, and that we can go much further if we are working together. And so the ecosystem was formed under the STEM Action Center in 2019. And last summer in 2023, we actually branched out and have reformed under a statewide nonprofit called Idaho Business for Education. And with that change, we got to hire on 6 full-time staff members for the ecosystem, as well as some part-time contractors and amazing financial officer who also make sure things happen and get checked off. And so I should have put it on the slides and I didn't, but we have our director, Erica Compton, myself as the statewide program coordinator, and then across the state, we have 4 different hub coordinators who are truly the boots on the ground people who are making things happen in their region. They live in the areas of Idaho that they're serving. And so that someone from Boise isn't trying to help someone from Salmon, Idaho, connect them with other partners in a very rural area of Idaho. We have someone who lives in Pocatello really serving Eastern Idaho that way. And with that, we can help connect you with partners and resources that make a difference in your community. And so when Deana and I were talking at ILA last year about the Make It program and how we can help, now that the ecosystem has staff, we have formalized programs, we can kind of do a little bit more. The idea really came of shifting the Make It program to better connect with the ecosystem's idea of let's connect our partners together. And so after a few months of planning and hearing some feedback from you all, we've decided to launch the Maker Learning Idaho program. And Deana, I don't think I can change slides. Could you? Perfect. So I came to a Maker Lit chat, gosh, I think it was in February. I'm not one of the last ones. And to kind of ask questions and see what the needs were from all of the libraries who have been part of the Maker program in the last few years. And what I overwhelmingly heard was that there was really 4 needs that were more access needs. Libraries and librarians really talked about needing access to funding to provide support for the Make It programs that they were doing in their libraries. They needed access to materials. Many of the libraries that were involved in Make It in 2014, 2015, when it was really starting, they got these really great items, but have since not been able to keep up with the demand of those items, or they have gone out of order and they needed to order new materials. And so those funding and material ones, and then access to program ideas. I know a lot of librarians are getting their program ideas on Facebook, which is amazing, but not every librarian is able to access Facebook on work time. And there's a lot of other complications with utilizing a social media platform that's not designed for work at work. And then 4th was an access to partners. It's great that we can do these programs in our libraries, but what is really impactful is when we can connect with a community partner and bring them in to do a program with students so that they can see themselves in that career, or they can see how making as an act can really connect with maybe something else in the future. And so those were the 4 different access needs. And overwhelmingly, they really connected and honed in on what the ecosystem was built to do. And so Can you use? Perfect. Beyond that Make It Lit chat that I attended, one thing that I have been hearing over and over again for multiple years was really needing one space where we could have all four of those access points, where we could have program ideas and materials, we could have lists of partners that we could contact in our area, we could have opportunities to chat with other people and connect with people from across Idaho, but also in our regions. And so the ecosystem has worked very hard on building out a community platform. This is similar to a social media platform, but it is specifically structured with work in mind, and it is localized to Idaho. And this community platform, it's similar to Facebook in that there is a feed that you can put comments in, you can ask questions, you can really crowdsource information, you can list out events on the platform. And in just a moment, I will actually see if I can share my screen and go into the community platform to really show you guys. We like to say this is a more robust Facebook, but that's appropriate for work. And so with the idea of having this Maker Learning Idaho program, we really wanted to use that community platform to make sure that we could provide access to partners and community, access to programming ideas, access to funding opportunities. The ecosystem does provide some grants out. We have this year, I think we had over $350,000 that we granted out to communities across Idaho, specifically separating that out into, 40,000 in North Idaho, 100,000 in East Idaho, and maybe like 150 in Southwest Idaho. And then we had a couple statewide ones. And so we had access to that funding, but also when I find grants that might be appropriate for libraries or our out of school networks to apply for, I will also put those on the community platform. And then access to, not necessarily access to purchasing materials on the platform, but there's access to partners who have materials that can share out. And so we partner quite heavily with the Think, Make, Create labs that come throughout Idaho, and they have materials that they you can borrow and use to do Make It programs in your library. They are about to launch a TMC Unhitched, where instead of having an actual trailer, you get a box of materials in the mail, you utilize those materials, and then you mail it off to someone else. And so we have access to all of those ideas and opportunities within the community platform. And so our program will actually live in that platform, and I would love to have you all click on that or go to the link at community.idahostem.org and check out the platform. Deana, are we okay if I share my screen?
Yeah,
okay,
totally. Perfect. Let me stop my sharing. Go Wonderful. For it.
And I will say this community platform, when you earlier when I had to reset my Zoom account, I also apparently needed to reset all my settings. Let me try that one more time. Perfect. Okay. Here we go. And so when you are, when you go to the community platform, it'll ask you to create an account. And once you create that account, it'll actually come to me and I approve every single user on the platform. Erica and I do. And then you can set up and authorize your account. This will help ensure that we have actual people on the platform and not robots that are putting spam information into the system. But when you're on the community platform, you'll first see that it'll take you to a live feed. This is very similar to any other social media site where we have different posts. You can see Corey Compton has posted an article. I posted a Maker Education Forum conference that is virtual that librarians could attend or even present at. And we have a couple shout outs for some of our partners across the state, and then other community members have posted their own events in their regions that are open to people. Within this, we also have where we have our groups. And so, as I mentioned, we have regional hubs across Idaho. So I see a lot of names that are from East Idaho on the call. And so you can connect with Eastern Idaho folks on the ICstem regional hub group. And then for today's call, we have our Maker Learning Idaho group. This is where you'll be able to post ideas and program information, resources in this group. I am planning on every Monday to do a Maker Monday where I will post a new activity or a new like professional development opportunity, whether it's a webinar or a podcast. And Deana, when you were going down memory lane, I really loved the idea of doing like a high-tech thing and a low-tech thing. And so I might kind of swap those out where week one we'll do something for, I don't know, middle schoolers, really high tech, and then maybe week two we'll do something for high schoolers, lower tech, and then week three for adults, high tech. And so really trying to populate this idea that making is for everyone. And the really cool thing about this community platform is that it doesn't have to all come from me. It comes from you guys and the ideas that you are doing. And so once you're on there and you join the group, you can put your own posts in, you can share photos of events or programs that you are doing. I might even throw in a couple of my making fails because as we all know, anytime you are making something, there is bound to be a failure. I will just share, I used to drive the Meridian bookmobile and there's a carpeted wall that it will be forever colored because I spilled paint everywhere and it just soaked right up into that wall. And that was how I left my mark on the library physically. So we can also share in those failures and really make it a learning community. Within here, you can also see members within this group specifically. So you can see that we do have a couple librarians in this group already. And the really cool thing about this community platform is you can connect instantly with people across the region in this group. If any of you know Florina Rubio, if you don't, you can click on her name and you can go to her profile and see what organization she works at, what region she serves. She's from Idaho AEYC, she serves statewide. You can message her directly or you can send her an email to connect with her. Oops, I did not mean to click that button. That will allow you to really build your own personal community of practice with members of your personal ecosystem. In here, I will also try to post up events, conferences, webinars that might be happening that might be of interest to this group, but you guys can also post those events. So if your library is hosting an event that you feel is really exemplary and you want to share that information out with people, you could post that event here and then possibly, I'm going to pick on Aberdeen. Maybe Aberdeen is doing a really cool Make It program and they are inviting a really cool community partner and they want to share that experience. So Aberdeen could put their event here and maybe someone in Chalice sees that event and they know that they can contact Aberdeen and say, hey, that program looks really cool. I want to try and do that program in my library, in my area, for my community. How can we make that happen? And so you can share not only your fails, but your wins and your passion for the programs that you're doing. In here, we also have the Media Center where you can upload resources, links to different sites and blogs. I've kind of started adding those things, but as you guys post in the live feed, I will take your links and I will put this on the Media Center so that we can keep them here. But you'll see we have like a link to Autodesk Instructable. So if you just click on that box, it'll take you right over to their website where they have activities, they have blogs, they have projects that you can work on. And then I've also started having a folder here for articles and blogs. So when I see something really cool or when you see something cool, you can post it in there and share it with other people, or professional development. Like there is I think this is a tinkering course from Coursera that's free to take to audit. And I think it's like 4 weeks of learning how to tinker and build with circuits. The one really cool thing that's kind of hidden on this site is that all of these resources in the media center, you can actually share your comments on. And so if you did this professional development course, you could say something like, I attended this course and would highly recommend it for new makers in libraries. So you can make that comment. You can start collecting those ideas and or sharing those ideas and those stories with others. You can also, like other social media sites, you can tag people on the account or on the platform. So I'm just going to pick Ashley because I know that she's on here. So I could tag her on there. So maybe I say, Ashley, I think you should try this webinar. I learned a lot. Maybe you'll learn a lot. We could chat about it afterwards. And then lastly, in this group, we do have forums available where you can start a new discussion on a specific topic. So the live feed, as most social media sites, you post whatever you want on there, and then it kind of builds off of that. But maybe you really want to talk about 3D printing in your library, and you maybe want to talk about how to fix your 3D printer in your library, because we all know that those 3D printers will break every single time you use them. You can start a new discussion on here specifically around that topic, and others can chime in on the things that they've tried, the things that have worked, the things that maybe don't work. And so that you can really have that back and forth dialogue on there. And then lastly, because these maker lits have been so popular and so helpful for actually connecting with humans, seeing your voice on Zoom, seeing your face on Zoom and hearing your voice on Zoom, I would like to find a time that works for the most people to have virtual maker learning Idaho sessions where you can come on and connect with people and actually learn from each other in real time. Those will probably happen closer to the start of the school year, because I know summer is chaos and that you probably don't have the capacity to do a monthly Zoom session with all the other maker programs that you are doing. And so we will probably start those back up maybe in August, once we kind of come together and really see what this platform can help us do. So that is the platform. Like I said, you can go on and create your account, and I actually saw a couple people creating them, so I will go approve them. But I would really love to see some engagement. If you join, post a photo, post a comment, maybe we can actually get some of those memory lane photos on here and share. Especially, I think young Erica needs to be in here.
Yeah, we could totally do that. Trisha, could you also show the grants and sponsorships area?
Yes.
I'm curious what that looks like.
Yes, I can. And actually, so if you click on the grants and sponsorship, this will take you to our internal grant process where we are giving out funding. Our fiscal year is about to end, and so our last round of grants have just wrapped up, but we will be reposting our grants beginning, I think I have the grant application opening in July, but not closing until September. And our grant process, I am actually super happy that it is the easiest process that I think there is. We really want to give this money out to Idaho communities. We don't want it at the end of the year. And so we want to make sure that you are successful in all of your grant opportunities. And so our grant year is a running year. So if you start an application in August and you don't have the capacity to submit it by September 9th or whenever it's due, it'll automatically go into the next round. We will have 4 rounds of grants next year, and each region has their own bucket of money to support projects and programs in their region. And I don't want to promise something, but we are working on finding a way to provide funding for professional development. So I know ICfL already does an amazing job with your first time attendee grants for conferences. And we have heard overwhelmingly that getting funding for programs and materials is really helpful, but getting funding to go to conferences is also extremely helpful. And so we will hopefully figure out a way to provide that kind of funding as well. In here, you can, and we'll be updating this for the next year, but we do have our full rubric for what we are looking on or looking for in the grant applications. We'll have our updated timeline and then some tips and tools. And you actually reminded me of two other things I would like to share on the community platforms. I showed you the group, but the broader, like more generalized platform does have a full member directory here. And you can actually see, well, this is an Idaho state thing. We do have a couple of national partners that live across the US that can come and help do some of our programs. And so you'll actually see where people are at within the community member directory. And within here, you can see we already have 539 users. You can search for people here, or you can use the filters to actually search for people within your community. I can't show you the filter one because we're having some issues with it today, but it will be fixed soon. But maybe you want to say, I want to bring somebody in from a museum. And so you can search museum, and you can see that we have a whole bunch of people who work in museums. And so I know we have a lot of people from East Idaho on the call today. So you can look at Robert Gay, who is from the Natural Museum of History. You can go to their profile. You can see what kind of information Robert has here, or you can connect with him. They might have materials that they can share with you. They might have program ideas that they can share with you. And so that member directory is really, really helpful. And then lastly, similar to how we had a media center within that group, we do have a more generalized resources page on the platform. And this is where you can find more like lesson plans and activities. So you can click on here and you can see that maybe you're doing early STEM. And so you'll click on that and find all of these other resources that you can do early STEM activities within your library. And I think on here somewhere we have professional development as well. So more resources, maybe not necessarily maker centered or specific, but more broad professional development opportunities in Idaho, or sorry, in the nation. Is there anything else that I should show you on the platform? I don't think so.
I think that was the main
we also
thing.
have the events thing. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me in the platform, or you can email me, and I'll put my email in the chat in a few moments. But yeah, that is what the Maker Learning Idaho program will be going forward, and I'm super excited.
Yay! I'm so excited too. And hopefully people can see that the tremendous amount of work that Trisha and her team have put into the back end of developing that program, and realize that there's no way that ICfL could have ever done something like that, because our job is, Make It was just a small part of the work that I do at the commission. And not only would it have taken me full time, but like me and a whole bunch of other people on staff. So I'm so excited, Trisha, that y'all have come on the scene and are creating these awesome opportunities for folks to connect and to hopefully keep growing as makers and growing your network and coming up with some cool new ideas for programming. Trisha, I think the one last thing that maybe would be good to share with this group is information about the annual convening. You kind of ended there talking about professional development, and if you want to go to like Make It type training but on steroids, tell us about the annual convening that y'all have.
Yes, and actually we're kind of I say revamping because it's only been a year, so it's not really revamping. We are building on. So the ecosystem every year does host an annual convening where we bring people from across the state and some of our national partners together to really talk about the ideas and the programs that we are doing in Idaho. we try to move it around the state every time. And so this last year it was in Nampa, Idaho. Next year we are going to be hosting it October of 2025 in Coeur d'Alene. And then after that, it'll probably go back to East Idaho. The convening so far is completely free to attend. And we have been lucky enough to be able to also provide travel reimbursement for people traveling outside of the area into that convening. And so we just held our annual convening in April of 2024, just a few weeks ago in Nampa, Idaho, and we had several librarians come. We do have it's similar to a conference in that there are sessions where you can actually present at, but the idea is that we are sharing stories, we're sharing programs, we are sharing resources, and not necessarily a professional development conference where you go and you learn one specific thing from one person. This is more of a community feeling. And what I would love to do is really continue what ILA or what Make It has done at ILA and having some kind of maker activity. And so I'll be looking at in October 2025 to bring the Maker Learning Idaho community together to maybe do some kind of full making program or making activity with the whole convening attendees or even just a breakout group. And then new this year, we will also be having some regional spring convenings. So not necessarily bring the whole state together, but folks from Region 4 Magic Valley area will come together. Folks from Eastern Idaho regions 5 and 6 will come together to really talk about the things that are happening in their communities and how you might be able to be more involved in those.
Cool. So many opportunities to connect with folks doing this work across the state. And maybe connecting with folks outside of libraries, which is a great way to gain some different perspective and find some new partnerships in your community. Thank you so much, Trisha, for all the work that you have started to get this up and going. And I look forward to seeing the continued success of the program, and so glad that that this work has found a new home and somewhere that it's going to be able to continue. Thank you all for joining today. It was great to take this walk down memory lane with you all. I'll put a link in the chat to the Make It website where there will be an archive of all of the resources from previous programs, and I'll also make sure to get a link to this video on there. And Trisha and I will also work on getting some language there that will direct folks to the new places that they can connect with people in Idaho and beyond to keep making at their library and school or wherever they're doing making in their community. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording.